But we are now going to move over to the amazing Kim Butler, who I just adore. I've only met her just a few months ago, and we are already just loving each other's space. Kim Butler, if you don't know of her, she has photographed hundreds of celebrities and world leaders, including 5 US presidents. Her credits include covers of New York Times bestsellers, gallery shoots with major broadcast networks. She's also been a regular contributor to People magazine. For more than a decade, Kim has traveled extensively through the Middle East and the Soviet Union as a photojournalist and documentary filmmaker in Jordan, Jerusalem, Gaza. Oh my gosh, she's been everywhere. She's had a couple of decades there, being a creative force behind the American Library Association's Celebrity Read poster series, exhibited nationwide in, everywhere, schools, libraries, all over the place. She's also exhibited in photographic series on banned books in New York called Censored. So that's pretty interesting. And her latest book, called The Art of Fear, is a photographic memoir, and it is available on Amazon. I'm not going to do any more because I can talk all day about the amazing Kim Butler. Over to you, Kim. We're looking forward to your sharing.
What do I say? What do I say after that? I don't know. This whole time I'm listening to everybody, and everybody is fantastic. I mean, I learned so much, and it's so inspiring. I thought that what I would do is, because it's about grit and grace, is start at the beginning of my life. From 2 years old until 5 or 6 years old was a wild child. I lived in Key Biscayne, Florida, that was being developed, but basically it was swamps. And my father had read me Huckleberry Finn, so I thought it was Huckleberry Finn. And for my 5th birthday, he gave me a machete. So while I was on the road, in case there was any altercations with alligators or monkeys or whatever, I could handle myself. He was obviously insane, which he was. The war made him crazy. He was in Hiroshima, and he just didn't come back normal. So he just let me be a free child. And then I end up, when I'm 7, back in New York and in an orphanage, because my father's had a complete nervous breakdown. And at that time, women had no power. So my mother is working at like Ideal Toy Company in Queens. You see, I got my Queens, see where my story begins. And she finally went to the church and begged the priest to help her. And I found this out because I got my orphanage records. And that was a real brain fuck, okay? Listening to that. So she went to the church and she said, I need to put her somewhere. I'm at work. She's a latchkey kid. Now we're going back 50 years. Okay. It was a lot safer then, I think, but still. And I get put into this big, gigantic Gothic building. There's no foster care at that time. And the first day, I get the welcome committee throws me off an embankment about 8 feet, and I land on my back. And I've had back pain all my life from that. Discs are out of, it's just a mess. And everyone at the orphanage, because I was very opinionated, and of course, and I was just me, I had some friends, but I really, really didn't fit in there. And the grammar school and the junior high school were butted right up against the orphanage. So then I go to grammar school, and I really don't make friends with anybody because I'm the kid that goes to Otley. Somebody said to me, I used to watch those kids and they'd go through that fence and up to that place. And it really was a horror show. It really was a horror show. So then I went to high school, barely got out of high school because I was dyslexic, but they didn't call it what it was then. They just called me stupid to my face, incorrigible, I'll never be anything. And this was like the guidance counselor. Okay. And you know, somewhere deep inside of me, I knew that they were wrong, but they still hurt me. They still did damage. So I end up at a city college, John Jay College of Criminal Justice. I was going to try to be a lawyer. And then one day, walking down 9th Avenue, I'm having a conversation with myself, and I said, you know, you better forget that lawyer thing. You can barely read and keep up with stuff because of this. Now we knew it was dyslexia. And, you know, you'll never be able to take the workload. You can't do that. So I said to myself, what do you love? And I loved movies. I used to stay up all night in grammar school and watch the movies till like the Late Show #2. And they used to have an apartment building, and there was only one light left on, and I knew that that was me. Okay. And I transferred to NYU Film School. And I quickly realized that there was an elitist school, and I was criticized for selling the pictures that I took of children. I did children as my thing. Everybody picked something. I picked children in the park. And I was criticized by the rest of the class for selling my photos to the parents. Now, the thing was, I was living alone by the time I was 17. My family was completely, I was in high school with my own apartment. Just think about that. And I'm looking at these entitled individuals, and I said, that's it. I'm not coming to class. And I never went back to class except to turn in my portfolio. So finally, my senior teacher, he says, I have to see you. And I said, yes. And he says, you've got to come to class. I said, why? I pay you. I did. And then I asked him years later, he says, no, you were right. and then he said, I've asked around about you. And I said, really? And what did they say? He said, you don't show up, but you come through in the end. And I said, well, I'm working on my deadlines. And there, I found that I didn't love movies because I worked for a couple of movie sets, and it was all political, all nonsense. Producer's sons had everything. I had nothing. I was like mopping the floors. So I went into photography because I could be alone and work on my own, getting to know myself and where I belonged. And I've always been a very introspective person. And when I would see that I wasn't behaving right, or there was something I needed to correct, I would be very honest with myself and I would correct it. As painful as that was, because they did a lot of damage to me. I mean, everyone kicked the shit out of me. There was no exception. My parents, my grandparents, the community, the schools, the teachers, except my 5th grade teacher, Adele Goldfarb, who became my Yiddish mama. She said to me, so what's your story? I was like, somebody wants to know what I think? Oh my God. And we were best friends until she died at 92 of Alzheimer's. And I just love her and miss her every day. So as Annie kind of laid it out, my career, I just turned around and said, okay. You know, I used to look at the buildings on 6th Avenue. It's all the publishing buildings. So you'd have Life and Time and People and all that. And I used to look at the buildings and talk to them and say, one day. And one brick at a time, I built this business, doing friends' headshots, doing this, doing that. I got better. Then got into ABC. And then a friend at ABC said, hey, I'm interning at People, come on over. And I went over and I showed my book to the big boss. And I was always very humble and polite. And because I just thought that was essential. And it's done me a lot of good in my career until you poke the dragon. That's another story, but we'll get to that in a minute. But I went up, I met her, and I said, can I see the other photo editors? And because there were like 15 of them, because people at that time was 50 million a week circulation. So for 10 years, I'm there, and you're only as good as your last photo shoot. But it made me great in a lot of ways. I learned how to deal with difficult people. I learned how to get things on time. I learned how to get 5 different openers. I wouldn't quit until I knew I had it. And nobody could stop me. And from there, I went on to do, as Annie said, television network stuff, and grew and grew and grew and grew, and had a tremendous career. And then we had 9/11 in New York. Are there any New Yorkers here? No, okay. A lot of New Yorkers, it didn't affect mentally, but me, I had a total nervous breakdown. I couldn't wrap my head around the evil, and people were jumping out of windows rather than burned to death. And I could not handle that kind of evil. So I'm off for a few years, just trying to gather myself together. I am working, but I'm not after big things. And then I decide, okay, it's time to go back to work, and I'm all right now. Let me go back to work, and let me get that real fire that I had before. And my mother gets sick with Parkinson's disease. And my mother had had such a terrible life that I just had to be around, and I had to take care of her, because I couldn't leave her alone with these caretakers, because you hear all these stories. And I wouldn't put her in a home. I kept her at home. And that lasted about 6 years. And during that 6 years, I started thinking about banned books. So I turned our living room in Charleston, where it's warm, into a studio. And I started shooting banned books. Okay, but my interpretation of them. So if you go on my site, KimberlyButler.com, you can see some of my banned books. And I'll be speaking at the library, the big library with the lions. It's second only to the Library of Congress on October 6th, again about banned books, because the fascism in America is rising. And, first they take the knowledge. That's the first step. And when you have these kind of people. So my mom passed, and I started working on Alice in Opioid Land, because I had some surgeries on my hands, and I got addicted to OxyContin. Have you all seen the Sackler shows that have run on OxyContin? Okay, go on my thing, because I call it Alice in Opioid Land, and I make Mrs. Sackler the queen. Okay, it's really funny. It's funny, but it's really disturbing. I built all the sets, and Alice falls into the hole, gets some pills from her mother's medicine chest, and did that. And then started doing a lot of storytelling. And I'm at the point now where we talk about authenticity, grit, and grace. Now I'm in reinvention. Now, as I said before, I turned around and I said, now what? Now, big networks are not going to hire me. They're going to hire some 40-year-old guy. And anybody that thinks any different, or the patriarchy is alive and well. It's just gotten sneakier. Okay. So I said, what do I do now? And I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to write my life story. But what I'm going to do, and at first I wasn't going to do this. I was going to gloss over it and do different things and not tell each story about the bad things I did. I did some wild shit. I've decided now to tell the entire truth. And why am I going to do that? Because the next young woman that picks up that book is going to read those words that were absolutely authentic and real. This is what happened to me. I was molested by a member of my family. I moved on, and I moved on because I refused to believe that those people were right about me. They were the losers. I wasn't the loser. And then my career proved it. But it was all about that fire to prove them wrong. And as Annie had mentioned, my book, The Art of Fear, fear of failure, fear of death by cubicle, fear of death by working on a film set, all that pushed me in the direction to be successful as an independent photographer. I've never worked for anybody else, ever. So fear can be a very, very healthy, great energy source because, you know, it's all those chemicals and you're afraid. So you take the easy way. You take the easy way and you get a job in the office and, you know, you go to work at ABC and you're a photo editor or some shit and sitting in an office for 20 years. And I'm like, no way, no way. I'm going to Gaza. I want to see what's happening in Gaza. Because I know our news is not telling us the truth. So let's go there, you know, and let's go to all these. And I started going on missions to the Soviet Union to get people out because the Soviet Union had collapsed. So I was going on all these missions to get people out and just saw such poverty and the elderly and the suffering. And I had seen a lot of that in my life. I was in Haiti at 12 or 14, alone. I went to see, of course, that was my first dictatorship. I went to see my friend Marie-Claude, who had moved back down there. So that was the first time I saw true, horrible poverty. So now I want to write this book with all the authenticity and all the truth. As embarrassing as some things are, because I wasn't always an angel. I did a couple naughty things, but I didn't hurt anybody. But we were running out of pot, so we had to go get ourselves a new ounce, you know, stuff like that. A boyfriend would piss us off, so we'd steal his car. We were street kids. We were street kids. And that was the great thing about becoming, I became University Honor Scholar at NYU, even though I didn't go to class. It was pretty funny. And I was a street kid. So I was like the perfect combination of power in a woman. Because I'll be very diplomatic and I'll be very nice. And then someone will try to put me in my place or keep me from doing what I want to do. And I will say, now you've gone too far.